Welcome back, everyone, to more from the Sableyes. Jordan, we're back.
We certainly are, and we're starting to have a look at the new format soon, but for now, we're taking a look at the current format with an event that happened quite a while ago that we never actually ended up posting the videos for.
Yeah, well, exactly. We kind of we took a bit of an extended break halfway through putting up some videos from a League Cup. So instead of putting all of them out there and showing off a bunch of games that are not necessarily super relevant anymore, what we did was we just took the final, which ended up being between Callum, who's on the left-hand side playing Blacephalon, and Calvin, who's on the right-hand side playing MewMew, and we can't get those two mixed up, Jordan, because it's going to be tough, Callum and Calvin. But both of these decks are potential improvers with Sword and Shield, so we figured we'd show this game as might potentially be a little bit relevant.
Yes, this is definitely two decks that are obviously they're going to change moving into the new format of Sword and Shield, but they definitely seem like they're decks that could be continuing to see play. Obviously, this Blacephalon deck is going to be potentially replacing the Pidgeotto line with the Chinchino line from the new set. There is a bit of a glare, it looks like, on Callum's side in the top corner. It's a little bad, but we did see him use Ultra Space, so I imagine that would probably be a Baby Blacephalon he's got on the bench there, and he's going for Stellar Wish and finding himself a welder, and I think I even saw some Fire Energy in his hand, so even if he doesn't get the turn 1 Elm, which is what you usually want to go for in this Baby Blacephalon deck, the turn 1 welder isn't a bad follow-up.
Yeah, this is a pretty good start for Callum if he has that energy. Double energy attachment would be perfect, but I mean, he's going first, so welder for 1 isn't even that bad as long as he gets a second attachment somewhere, but there is 2 energy in there, so double welder onto a Blacephalon onto the bench and drawing 3 cards. We can see he has a Pidgeotto in hand, so he'll be able to evolve that next turn, and he's just looking for another Pidgey or 2 and picks 1 up off of the 3 cards from welder. So this looks like a pretty good start for a first turn for Baby Blacephalon. Obviously,
yeah, I was really just about to say that the only card that he really wants to find off that welder would be like a second Pidgey, and it's not quite as good as 3 Pidgey, but the fact that he's got those 2 energy on the Blacephalon means he doesn't have to welder next turn to pull off an attack if he wants to go for an attack next turn. He can potentially set off an Elm next turn to get his board even better, so he's certainly in a pretty good spot. On the other hand, we see starting off with Calvin, I think just going for the Ultra Space here. There are actually a couple Ultra Beast cards that Mewtwo lists are typically playing. It's usually just the Gyarados GX all the time that they play, so we'll see if Calvin chooses to fetch that out of his list, and there it is. He's grabbing that. Might just be there to thin out of his deck for a Mysterious Treasure or a Dedenne, etc., but that could actually be a pretty good card in this matchup if Callum, I've done it already.
It's already
Callum
happened.
has Pokédolls in the active, then he can just use that Nagano to snipe around it. So definitely a good card for Calvin to get into the discard pile when he's able to do so.
Certainly is, and then playing down the tag call to search out 2 tag team cards from his deck. This is the thing that has given Mewtwo a massive boost, obviously, over the last 2 months. This tag call card has done a huge service for Mewtwo, being able to find Pokemon whenever you need them. He's going to be able to find a couple of Pokemon here to discard with a potential Dedenne, or even a supporter to help him draw some more cards. Be interesting to see which Pokemon he goes for here. This is always the tough thing with Mewtwo, is you need to know which Pokemon are for which matchups. Now, obviously, Nagano GX, you mentioned, is a good one. It's a free search with Ultra Space. Calvin, I've just done it. Damn it! It took how long's this video been recording for? All of 3 minutes. We've both stuffed it up. Going for SBDO and a Cynthia Caitlyn. So looks like Calvin just giving himself the guaranteed draw off of the Cynthia Caitlyn, and what is going on here?
I'm not too sure what he's
What
doing
is
here.
going on here?
He's trying to activate a Giant Half effect, it looks like. There it is.
Right.
He's got it in his hand, he just forgot to place it down. So
good grief. I was the exact same as Callum there. What the hell is going on? What are you doing? Can't just play down a card and search some stuff?
We figured it out, so it's all good. And I imagine that means we might be seeing a turn 1 welder from Calvin here. And that actually might be, or at least that might be what he's going for if he can find it. That's another question. But that's probably going to be one of the biggest changes that's going to be happening to Mewtwo as we move forward into the Sword and Shield format. The fact that it's going to be losing its turn 1 supporter means it's not going to be able to get those explosive welder turns. We actually just see Calvin go for 3 back-to-back acrobikes, and he still didn't find the welder if that's what he was going for. So
Yeah.
he's going to have to just play the Cynthia Caitlin there to draw a couple cards. His hand is certainly full of fire energy, so would have liked to see a welder here, maybe even pull off like a turn 1 turbo strike, knock out his Jirachi, but as it is right now, I think he's probably just going to have to settle for an attachment and a pass.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing to play 3 acro bikes and not hit the thing that you wanted. Lots of thinning happening here, but not a lot of luck for Calvin. Looks like it is just going to be the attachment onto the active, which is not the greatest. I mean, he's not in a massive...
He's not sure.
Yeah, he's making it up, but that onto the bench maybe, fearing that Baby Blacephalon taking a big knockout next turn, although the fact that Callum didn't get a 3rd attachment last turn means that I don't actually think that it's possible for him to get that knockout. Could be, I don't know.
I mean, it's certainly possible. He's got a Fiery Flint in his hand, so that's 4 of the 6 energy you would need in hand to get the knockout. I feel like in this position...
that's fair. He's going to... I didn't notice how many cards he actually had. That's fine, fair enough.
Yeah, he's got a few. I feel like it's a position where if Callum gets the knockout, and he's also got the giant half to use as well to find even more energy, so it's actually not that hard for him to get the knockout, so I respect Calvin's decision to attach to the bench there. It does feel like if he gets the knockout, he's probably going to win the game anyway, because taking a knockout turn 2 against Mewtwo when they're still on 6 prizes is just such a huge disadvantage. But hey, it's not that bad. He can always just weld it to the active next turn, hopefully, even if Callum does miss the knockout. So we'll see if he's able to get it here. I imagine it's not too hard. I think he's probably just looking for a way out of the active, probably looking for an escape board, and Skateboard is actually a pretty hard card to find in these Baby Blacephalon decks because there's no way to really search for it, and it's only usually a small count of 2 or 3, so we'll see if he's able to find it here, but I wouldn't have high hopes.
Nah, doesn't hit it there. He's got a Poker Gear in there that he might choose to utilize to get himself out. He's actually already got one in hand as well, so might be able to find a supporter here. You can see Callum thinking maybe best to play the Fiery Flint down, thin some more energy out of the deck, and then potentially try and hit into a supporter to get the Fiery Flint, but it's starting to be really, really tough.
Yeah, I don't think he's used a Giant Half either, so he could even just Giant Half away the Fiery Flint if he doesn't want to discard any of the other cards in his hand. I imagine if he does want to go for the knockout, his best bet would probably be to just try and welder maybe to another Baby Blacephalon and then use the half to rebuild your hand full of fire energy. Looks like he whiffed completely off the Poker Gear, so I don't believe that's going to make it possible for Callum to pull off an attack here. I don't think that's a problem because he went first, he got the turn 1 welder. He really wants to be prioritizing making sure his board is set up properly. It doesn't need to be a turn 2 attack to really pull the momentum into your favor in this matchup, but it certainly would have been really nice if we got it. I'm sure Calvin will be happy to see that's just a pass from Callum here.
Yeah, it's a real positive for him. Drawing a Cherish Ball off of the top there could have been useful last turn potentially to find the Dedenne, but now it's not that big of a deal. It could potentially be a Dedenne anyway because there's nothing really of use in Calvin's hand by the looks of it. There's a couple of energy in there, but he does have the Hearth in play, and he's kind of in an awkward position where he can kind of commit to the active with an energy now and hope that he hits the welder again, but he's looking for the same card, and it's gonna have to happen, or otherwise, again, we're gonna be missing an attack here.
Oh yeah, the fact that he's gonna have to delay change away a bunch of these fire energy, I imagine. Hopefully, he's ideally going to be able to pull off a Turbo Strike, and that would put him in a really good position where he could theoretically have 3 energy on each of his Mewtwo, meaning even if Callum does get a knockout on either Mewtwo, he would still be able to go Welder attach and then pull off, say, a cross-division GX to completely destroy Callum's board, for example. So that's what I imagine Calvin's going to be going for, is trying to split the energy as evenly as possible, knowing that he'll be fine no matter which one gets knocked out, and it's pretty easy to do. We know he's got those fire energy in the discard, he's got access to half, so really the only card he needs to draw is a welder, and he hasn't drawn one yet, so theoretically they should, or at least mostly, all be in deck still unless he's prized it for you, so we'll see if he gets it here.
Yeah, looks...
I think it's the first card?
I think it might have been there, yeah, so he does have one. We're going to be able to grab a couple of energy from the Hearth, discards the Mega Lopunny, which isn't super relevant in this matchup, but it's also better in the bin than in your hand. Discards and finds 2 energy. Does he find 2 energy? What's he doing?
He might have gone through them already. I'm not sure. I don't see any in his hand, so
no.
Hopefully he hasn't run out. He's got 1 in hand, so that's all you really need.
There is 2 in hand. He's got 2.
Okay, so maybe So maybe he just drew all of his energy. The one thing I don't remember is if he was able to discard that Turbo Strike Solgaleo. I think he might have, but I don't specifically remember.
Got that one off of an Acro Bike in the early game, so he is going to be able to Turbo Strike here, and he's going to put himself in a really, really strong spot. The big issue, though, is if he doesn't have any fire energy left, then that big SBDO play might not be available to him until a little bit later on. So it could be a bit awkward here for Calvin, even though he is going to go up in the prizes. He could potentially find himself in a little bit of trouble a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. These Mewtwo lists, depending on the build, usually play, I'd say, between 7 and 9 basic fire energy. We see 4 on the board right now, and I know there's at least 2, maybe 3 in the discard pile, so it's not unrealistic to think that he's got very little fire energy left in deck. Although he is about to take a prize card off this Jirachi, and if he's lucky, he can even take one more with this Mewtwo before it's knocked out. So hopefully, if he does have some fires in the prizes, he'll be able to unprize them, but we didn't see him get one there.
No, didn't get one, which is a little bit upsetting for him, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. Here we've got Callum in a really strong position to take 3 prizes. If he can get a couple of cards, obviously, Baby Blacephalon designed to do lots and lots of damage. He's got access to 2 energy from the stadium, and he does have access to a couple of Pidgeotos here. He's playing Professor Realm and searching out an extra Pidgey and 2 Pidgeotto. That means 2 Pidgeotto now and 3 Pidgeotto next turn. Doing 2 Pidgeotos now gives him a look at 4 more cards. There's 1 energy in hand, but I can't actually see any other fire-related cards. Doesn't mean they're not there. It means he's going to need to find 4. So a Fiery Flint is pretty much what we're going for here. And if he gets it, then that'll be a big knockout.
That was obviously a very good stamp from Calvin last turn. Callum obviously had all the cards he needed in hand to pull off the knockout if he hadn't been stamped. So now he's going to have to be hoping to get a little lucky off of this ML. He's betting smart and using the Giant Half Thirst to thin out of his deck a little bit, hoping to draw a Fiery Flint. And I'm not sure if Fire Crystal would also be an out. I don't think there's be enough energy in this card. Oh, there was a few out there, actually.
There was a couple there, so he could potentially use that, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be enough. There's a Fire Crystal
3 in the discard, and that would almost be enough, but he does need to attach 1, so we see a Fire there.
There's a Fire Crystal and a Fire off of the Pidgeotto.
I think that with the Fire Crystal and the 1 from hand, I think that he might be... What has he got? 3 in hand. So if he's got 3 in the discard pile, I think he'll be just off Stewie. So it looks like he'll have 5 energy in his hand right now, which will be able to do 250 damage at most. I could be wrong. There could be 6. I think there might be 6.
Yep, there's 6.
There's 6. Perfect.
Bang.
That is exactly what Callum wanted to see. And Calvin has the potential to respond really strongly here. He could potentially knock out 3 Pidgeotto this turn if he was able to pull off Whirlwind plus Rainbow Energy, or maybe he could knock out the Blacephalon and a Jirachi, or Blacephalon and Pidgeotto. One of those combinations would make it really hard for Callum to respond, but I think the most important thing is as long as he just gets any knockout on this Blacephalon, he'll at least make it hard for Callum to respond. Maybe if he partners it with a reset stamp as well, that could be enough to make Callum miss the knockout, but the fact is that Callum doesn't have to win the game next turn. He's got a couple turns to pull off this combo, so it really is on Calvin to try and make it as difficult as possible for Callum to find the cards he needs next turn.
Yeah, if there is a knockout and a stamp, which is being played by Calvin there, so now all we need is a knockout on that active Blacephalon. It means that Callum will need a total of 9 energy to take a knockout on a Mewtwo next turn. He'll need 3 for an attachment and 6 to discard. Not impossible, but very difficult. Callum has the board set up at the moment to deal with this reset stamp, but it's better to give your opponent fewer cards than leave them with a whole heap. So Calvin here will be drawing 3 off of the reset stamp, and I think that Callum is going for a Dedenne for 6 new cards.
Something interesting has happened here is he's actually chosen to promote his reset whole Marshadow, and he had the option, I believe, to promote Jirachi, so he's obviously intentionally promoted this reset whole Marshadow, and what that tells me is maybe it means that Calvin could be considering going for the Red Knuckles here, which would do 70 damage for 1 energy, and that would not knock out the Blacephalon, which is obviously pretty awkward because you want to be taking your opponent's resources away when you stamp them, but it does mean that it would force Callum to knock out a non-GX and then take another big knockout on either a tag team or a Dedenne, so it could be pretty strong in terms of the prize trade, forcing Callum to go through this non-GX. But I think if it's not getting the knockout, he's going to have to use a GX anyway to finish it off. So I'm not too sure what the idea behind this Red Knuckles play is, but it could potentially work out for him if he's able to follow it up with like another non-GX next turn.
Well, I think the key is the 70 damage onto that Blacephalon gives Calvin a little bit of time to attach an energy. Looks like he's gone through all of his fire energy. He only picked up one off of that giant hearth.
You see, activating reset hole on the active. I don't think you can do that.
I think Callum is about to tell him that you can't do that. So I think that's happened. There we go.
All right.
So
okay. Maybe that's the reason why Calvin decided to promote the Marshal, is because he was under the impression that you could use the ability in the active, which obviously is not the case. So he might be forced to go for the Red Knuckles here. Actually, he's just retreating and deciding to take the knockout with Mewtwo, which I think is probably the safer play. It would have been really cute to do as you said, just do the 70 damage, and then maybe go for like a cross division next turn to take the knockout and then take out 2 Pidgeotos or something. That would have been a really strong play if he was able to set that up. But as long as he's only got 1 fire energy in the deck, I don't think it's realistic for him to pull off cross division this turn. Now that he's attached an energy sorry, he can't cross division next turn, now he's already wasted his attachment.
Yeah, exactly. If he had have attached to the active, then he might have been able to give himself a chance. But all he's done there is just waste the switch, just retreating into a Jirachi, Stellar Wishing into a switch, and then a knockout. He's going to use the Marshadow now. Put it in your own deck, preferably, would be a good idea. And then we will see some sort of attack. I would hope that we'll be able to see Solgaleo here, because there's obviously not a lot of options for Calvin if he doesn't start accelerating energy to the bench. If he can't get that energy into play, then Callum's got all the time in the world. He's got 5 more turns to find the energy that he needs. He's in absolutely no rush.
But the question is, where would he even accelerate the energy? He's only got Jirachi and Dedenne on the bench, so if he does attack with Turbo Strike, then he's going to have to put his energy onto a really awkward Pokemon, which will probably only end up being used for retreating purposes. I do wonder what Calvin was going for with that Stellar Wish. He was maybe trying to find an extra resource for next turn, but didn't end up really paying off for him. I didn't see what his prize card there was. If he drew a Fire Energy that cost the prizes, that could be what he needs to pull off the Cross Division next turn. And while Cross Division would only get 3 of his 4 remaining prize cards, it could be just what he needs to delay Callum from finding the closing cards that he needs to win this game.
Yeah, it could potentially, but it looks like Calvin might be in a bit of trouble here. That Solgaleo onto a Jirachi is never a good look. But hey,
it's certainly not ideal.
The energy's there now, it can retreat, and Callum finds himself an Ultra Space off of this Jirachi, which is going to be very, very handy for him. Obviously, the key for Callum is finding an attacker. He doesn't need to attack this turn, but the more pressure he can put on, the more likely he is going to be able to find the cards he needs. And look at that, he's actually found Clefairy there, so we could play that one down and just retreat into it and force Calvin in to do like a snipe attack, or that SBDO play could potentially be a way to go as well. But it's a bit unfortunate that he wasn't able to find a little bit more energy there. He's got 2 in hand, but he's already gone through quite a few of his resources for finding energy. So it could be a bit difficult for Callum to get all the cards he needs.
Yeah, it certainly is possible for him to win this turn if he had just a couple more Fire Crystals or something, but this is going to be a really close game if he can't win the game this turn, which it seems like it's going to be the case, because no matter what he does with that Blacephalon, as long as Calvin's able to find a Rainbow Energy, no matter where it is on the board, he's going to be able to knock it out with that Venom Shot from the Ganondorf GX, and if he's able to keep enough energy on the Mewtwo where he can go from Venom Shot this turn and then Cross Division next turn, he can all of a sudden win the game next turn, and Callum's going to have to find not only another Blacephalon with 3 energy, but also another 6 energy to take the knockout, and he'd only have theoretically 1 turn to pull it off. So this is definitely a big turn for Calvin to kind of try and take advantage of this slightly slower turn from Callum here. The Pokédoll definitely is good because it is going to force the Rainbow Energy from Mewtwo, and more importantly, in my opinion, it's going to try and force the Mewtwo to discard some of its precious Fire Energy, which he's definitely running low of. I don't know if Calvin's playing like a Fire Crystal or an Energy Recycle system. If he's playing either of those cards, and that could be just what he needs to close out this game. But looking at what we can see so far in terms of his energy resources, I would not be surprised if he's running very low and is going to struggle to find himself that cross division.
Yeah, and there's just a welder for 1 there to draw 3 cards.
Well, the Rainbow Energy was the last card he drew, I think. That's
yeah, it was. There it is. Picks it up, and now not only does he have the access to using the Gyarados GX to snipe onto the bench, but he also has 3 energy on the active Mewtwo. So if he's able to pick up another energy off of these prize cards, then he's in a really good spot here.
Yeah, no energy from the prize, unfortunately. So really, I think it's going to come down to whether Calvin's playing one of those energy recovery cards, such as the Fire Crystal or the Endure Cycle system, which are fairly common in some builds of Mewtwo. I'm not sure exactly on Calvin's list, but if he is playing one of those cards, then it's very likely that Calvin can just win the game next turn. So there's a lot of pressure on Callum to try and find the cards he needs to knock out this Mewtwo on this turn. It's certainly not impossible. He can still get it. He's got the Pidgeotos and the Jirachi with Celoish, so he's going to be able to see quite a few cards, but it is a pretty massive combo that he's going to need to hit, and I'm not sure how many resources he has left to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very tough to find all those cards to win the game. This is going right down to the wire here. It looks like that first turn where Callum missed that knockout on the Mewtwo could potentially be the thing that costs him here, because giving Calvin that extra turn has come back to bite him. That's a very good pickup off of the Pidgeotto there. Finds a Fire Crystal, so that's 3 energy. The second Pidgeotto gets himself a Clefairy Doll, so that's going to be able to stall him another turn. There's a Blacephalon in hand, he's got energy in hand, he's got the Fire Crystal, but he doesn't have enough to attack for 300, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. There's a welder and a crystal in that welder, so he's able to grab that out here.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to get the game this turn, so I think his best alternative play is going to be just doing exactly the same play he did last turn, where he promotes a Clefairy Doll and kind of just forces Calvin to use Venom Shot again if he doesn't have access to the game-winning cross division, because if he just keeps forcing the Venom Shot over and over again, eventually Calvin's going to run out of energy to keep declaring that attack, and that could be the turning point that he needs to find that one turn to set himself up. He's finding a welder off the Pokegear. That might give him the potential to pull off the win this turn. I didn't realize he had that Pokegear in his hand, so with at least 2 Fire Crystals, he could just be like one more energy searching card away from finding all the energy he needs to take this knockout.
He is. He's got 2 energy in hand plus 2 crystals. So all he needs is... What are we looking at here? Is that another Pokegear? All we need here is a single energy or energy search card off of a welder to give Callum the game. It just depends. Does he want to go for it? You have to presume that yes, you would.
I think you do, because even if you miss it, you still force Calvin to spend more resources in knocking out the Blacephalon that you set up. So it's definitely puts on a lot of pressure and forces Calvin to go for resources he's not comfortable in using up at this point. Definitely would be a bit of a miss. I did see, there it is, the first card he drew. He actually drew 2 Fire Energy. So I think with the 2 Fire Crystals in his hand, that is going to be enough for him to attach and still have enough energy to take the knockout on this Mewtwo with 6 energy. Just got to wait for Callum to reveal the cards, and that will be the second 300 damage.
Bang.
300 damage attack for the game. I actually forgot what Fireworks Bomb. No, that's the other one.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's called. It does 300 damage. And there's Calvin showing off the fact that both his Rainbow Energies were in the prizes in that game. So, well, not both. Sorry, 2 of his 3 Rainbow Energies were in the prizes. So, not a lot of free energy attachments for in that turn, that game, and probably cost him in the long run. But it's not the end of the world. We've still got another game to go at least, and I think Calvin will probably be going first.
So we were wrong about which kind of energy Calvin had in the prizes. It wasn't the fires, it was the rainbows.
It was the rainbows. He just discarded too many fires early.
Yeah, I remember saying right at the beginning of the game, he had to discard a whole bunch of energy when he had that to detonate due to those giant halves, sucking the energies out and then being forced to discard them. Usually not a bad thing when you've got access to Turbo Strike, but it just didn't work out quite in Calvin's favour this game. So he's going first this game, whereas I believe Callum went first in the first game. It's definitely a huge advantage to go first in this matchup. So Calvin going first is going to give Callum very little time to actually set up his Blacephalons and his Pidgeotos. It's going to be putting on lots of pressure if he has a good start. He opens the Marshadow with Reset Hole, unfortunately, and now he has the knowledge that he can't just discard that out of the active, so it could be a little annoying for him to get that out of the active.
Yeah, exactly. It could be a bit of a tough one, but hey, it's not a big problem. We've got a tag call here, which is going to find our MewMew and a Guzmahala, which is going to get ourselves... it could potentially get the stadium, get himself a couple of fire energy, get a skateboard, and we'll also find a rainbow or a weak guard, which is very, very strong. Obviously, a good way to start off the first turn of your second game.
Yeah, as long as he's able to find a welder next turn, then the rainbow energy plus the escape board will put him in a fine position to pull off pretty much any attack he wants to next turn. And honestly, he doesn't even really need to pull off a big attack next turn. He might even be fine just with 2 manual attachments, not even needing the welder, because he could pull off something like a Turbo Strike on this Pidgey or a Jirachi, whatever ends up being in the active. Turbo Strike should be enough to knock out pretty much everything in this Baby Blacephalon deck, so I imagine that's what Calvin's going to be going for if he's not able to find a welder. If he is able to find welder, then he could obviously go for some more advanced plays, such as maybe an early Venom Shot or even a cross division, depending on what Callum's board looks like. But he is going to be prioritizing that Solgaleo, it looks like, and that's what I like to see in this matchup, is getting that Solgaleo into the discard right away with that Guzma and Hala. So looks like he'll be able to find all those cards we were just talking about. He'll have the Giant Half, he'll have the Rainbow Energy. The only thing he might be missing is that welder.
Yeah, exactly. So it will be interesting to see what happens here. Calvin just going a little bit too fast for himself there. Almost played the Guzmahala without searching for the Solgaleo first, which would have been awful. But attaches the Rainbow Energy here. We'll chuck the 10 damage on there. And now the Dene away that hand. There's a Charizard, and a Charizard breaks in the bin. So plenty of stuff getting chucked away. We'll be able to find some energy, discarding a Latios. And this is looking like a pretty solid first turn. As long as that welder's in his hand, he should be A-OK for next turn.
Yeah, that's a very strong start. I do question, maybe would it have been worth to just hold the Giant Harp and the Dene in your hand? I don't know what Calvin was really looking for to draw this turn, since he'd already attached an empty and played a supporter. So he could have potentially held on to that, but I don't think it's going to really matter, because Blacephalon is not a deck that typically plays reset stamp, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. Theoretically, Callum this turn is probably going to have a very simple turn, where ideally he's just going to play a Professor Elm, search for a couple birds, and then maybe if he's lucky, bench a Blacephalon and attach to it. But it's not usually a very exciting turn one for these Baby Blacephalon decks.
No, Baby Blacephalon likes to just do nothing. An attachment to a Pidgey here puts another fire in the bin and gets a Jirachi into the active, and here comes Professor Elm. Will grab himself 2 Pidgeys and a Pidgeotto, or 2 Pidgeottos and a Pidgey, or it depends what's in his hand. Realistically, I'd probably say there's 3 Pidgeys and a Pidgeotto, 2 Pidgeys and a Pidgeotto coming, and here they are. So that will set up the board nicely, and it will give Callum a nice starting off point to get himself the rest of the cards he requires. The Jirachi in the active is really strong as well. I guess the only thing that he could really do to make this board state better at the moment would be to put down another Jirachi, so that when this one gets knocked out, he's got one to promote.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that he was able to thin quite a lot of cards out of his deck before going for the Stellar Wish. He was able to play both the Giant Harp and the Elm to thin quite a few cards out, but it doesn't look like he drew not anything too special off of it. The Escape Board and the Welder are certainly not bad options. You actually think you have one for the Giant Harp here, which is also pretty strong.
The Heat Factory.
That's the one, the Heat Factory. Will let him get rid of the Giant Harp and start drawing some extra cards. I guess he could also, wouldn't be bad to find himself with a Fairy Doll in his first few turns. He can't use it this turn, obviously, but maybe for next turn it wouldn't be a bad idea to try and find a doll to put into the active. So it looks like we're going to see the Heat Factory being utilized right away, drawing 3 cards, and there's 2 Jirachis. That's the card that you said that you wanted to see this turn. So
yeah, there it is.
Certainly not going to be too upset to see that.
This is a perfect board state for turn 1, because now not only do you not care that your Jirachi's getting knocked out, you have a free retreat option. You got a skateboard in hand. You've got Pidgeottos for days. Everything's looking good, and it's just a matter of finding a attacker next turn. I think that's going to be Callum's only real problem. Calvin's board looking equally strong. It's just a matter of finding the welder here. If he's got the welder, then he's got a double attachment onto that Mewtwo, and he'll get himself going. But I guess the other thing that Calvin really needs is he needs to get himself that attacker. So that Mew off of the tag call is really important here, just so that when he does use Turbo Strike, he's got an energy or 2 to accelerate onto the bench. No point putting him on Jirachis or Dedenne anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So Calvin theoretically doesn't even need to play the Welder. All he needs is a manual attachment to start pulling off the Turbo Strike. The more important thing is actually that he gets his energy into the discard pile rather than the board. So I don't think he had any in the discard before now, or maybe he had only one. So seeing that Heat Factory discard the fire energy is going to be really important here, and he's also got the Welder to chuck another 2 energy on the board. So it looks like it's quite possible that Calvin will have 5 or 6 energy on his board by the end of this turn, which would be really strong and very intimidating considering Calvin's game so far has basically just been playing an element, Stellar Wishing, and passing, and your opponent's staring you down with almost 2 fully powered Mewtwo's on the bench, or probably one in the active is about to happen, I imagine. So definitely a very intimidating start for Calvin. And you got to say that Callum kind of is going to have to start god drawing and setting up really quickly to deal with this super strong start that Calvin's had.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be really interesting. Although that rainbow attachment onto the Mewtwo there, though it's obviously good, you've got your energy attachment. It's going to be a little bit frustrating for Calvin because that means that Mewtwo is now only 5 energy from hand away from getting knocked out. So he's actually inadvertently making this game a little bit easier for Callum. But it's fine. He's got a Mewtwo with 2 energy. He's got a Mewtwo with 4 energy. I'm sure he doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to only have to discard 5 energy instead of 6 to take a knockout, but the more important factor is the fact that Mewtwo has 4 energy on it, and it is very easy to see a cross division coming out from Calvin next turn. And the fact that they would take 3 of his last 5 prizes cards and almost completely cripple Callum's board, it would be hard to see him taking 2 tag team knockouts from that point, while Calvin would only have to take 2 regular non-GX knockouts, which is much easier in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It's much easier because you can just go boop boop and that's it.
So we're definitely going to need to see a really strong couple turns from Callum here to keep up with this board. Ideally, would love to see like a knockout on this Mewtwo this turn. I know that's asking for a lot, but it might be the sort of turn that Callum needs to keep up with this start. When Mewtwo not only is going first in this matchup, but also has such an aggressive and powerful starting hand. Yeah, exactly. You really need to make sure you're not wasting too much time setting up and going straight into knockouts if you can. We see the escape board off the Stellar Wish there, which is one of the more important cards we needed to find. He's also got quite a few energy in the discard pile, so say, for example, a Fiery Flint and a Fire Crystal would quickly fill up his hand with all the energy he needs. It's mainly just that Blacephalon and the Welder that he's missing, and he's just going to have to retreat into the Clefairy Doll and pass. This could be a perfect turn to see a cross division from Calvin here. I feel like it would almost end the game.
I think you might be right. Like, there's nothing much that Callum could really do in response to that. It's just a matter of whether or not Calvin has the cards in order to do that. Now, Jordan, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to commentate on your own because as we're recording this, it's 4:45, which is time to feed the cat, and she's annoying the hell out of me. So I'm going to go and feed her. You continue recording.
That is quite alright. We'll catch you in a minute, Mitch. So we see the manual attachment of the Rainbow Energy going onto Calvin's Mewtwo here. So could be potentially just going for like another Turbo Strike on this Pokédoll. He can't Gust and take out any of those Pokemon on the bench unless he's going for that Venom Shot Snipe. And seeing them again, it'll hit the discard there with the Giant Half's definitely going to be what Calvin wants to see. I guess maybe he could be going for a Welder here, just trying to Venom Shot one of those benched Pidgeotos, or the Jirachi could be really strong as well. But you really don't want to be just spending too many resources when you're only taking 1 prize card. It is pretty expensive to go for a 2 energy Venom Shot when your opponent's only got 3. Well, so already got 3 birds in play, so that they're not going to be too upset about losing 1. I think that was another Dead Exchange from Calvin here, so I guess he's still searching for that Welder. I didn't see it in his hand though, so I guess maybe he's just going to have to settle for a regular knockout onto this Clefairy Doll. He's in the position where he doesn't really need to take a prize card this turn. He's still going to be okay, just because of how strong his board is. Like, Callum's probably going to need like a great catcher and a knockout with Blacephalon to take out that Mewtwo on the bench. That's going to have 4 or 5 energy on it to stay in this game. Because once Calvin pulls off that cross division GX, I feel like it's going to be really hard for Callum to keep up in this game. So yeah, looks like he's just having a quick look for his discard. He does have the Welder in his hand, so he can go for that Venom Shot if he wants to, keep applying pressure and go down to 4 prize cards. If he can get to 3 prize cards, then obviously the cross division will just win the game. So it's definitely pretty strong to take the knockout here, but yeah, it looks like he's just going to play it safe. Settle for taking no prize cards this turn and just go for that Turbo Strike onto the bench Mewtwo, which now has 6 energy on it, which means the cross division can take 3 out of those 4 prizes, meaning Calvin's literally just 2 attacks away from the game. He just attacks once onto the knockout, to knock out a non-GX, and then uses cross division to take 3. So that means Callum basically has to take tag team knockouts every turn for the rest of the game. Otherwise, Calvin's gonna simply take all of his prize cards before Callum can respond.
All right,
He's definitely got the
I've done
potential. You've done it. Good
I've
stuff.
done it.
I was just
Fed the
saying
cat.
that Calvin's board is basically set up to win in like the next 2 turns. Realistically, he can take a non-GX, and then he can and then he can cross division with that 6 energy Mewtwo on the bench. That would take 4 of his last 5 prizes, and then Callum really can't win from there. So he's probably going to have to try and get the knockout this turn to stay in the game.
Yeah, well, the great catcher off of that Jirachi could be the card that he needs to do it, but the way you kind of put that catcher on the ground suggests to me that maybe it's not exactly what he was looking for. Obviously, there's a lot of cards still required, and even if he does get them all, there is still the chance that there's not enough. There's not got enough energy to take a knockout on a second Mewtwo. So this could be tough times for Callum. It's okay. I mean, he's already won the first game. He's happy to go to a game 3, I suppose. But this is a far cry from the setup that he had in the last game.
Yeah, it certainly would be beneficial for him to dust out the bench Mewtwo, because not only is it 1 energy easier to knock out the bench Mewtwo than the active one, use that double rainbow, but it also means that he's clearing the 6 energy Mewtwo off the board instead of the 3 energy Mewtwo, and the 6 energy one's obviously much more intimidating. So if he can pull off that perfect play, then that would be ideal, but I feel like once again we've missed the Blacephalon from Callum here. I think that's the card that he's been looking for off of all these Stellar Wishes and ML, just trying to find like an Ultra Space, for example, to find himself an attacker. So it doesn't matter how many Wallers you're holding, you don't have any Waller to, so it looks like he's just having to settle for that Professor Elm's lecture to get himself some extra birds, and straight away we find the Blacephalon
There
on
it
the
is.
first ML.
There
It's a bit late now, but it's still going to be a good card to hold for next turn if it's not too late. But
Yeah, if there is a next turn, this is a good card for it. Yeah, no, it's a bit disappointing there, but hey, he's got all the resources, like literally everything that you could possibly need is there. It's just a matter of getting the energy into play on that Blacephalon, which is going to be a real struggle. And you'd think that, yeah, Calvin's going to find himself in a situation where he's taking 3 prizes next turn, which is more than enough to put him in a commanding position in this game.
yeah, and this is also assuming that we don't see something like a reset stamp from Calvin, because if we see a stamp from Calvin on this turn, even though it would be the 6 cards, he could partner it alongside a Cross Division GX to, say, knock out double Jirachi plus a Pidgeotto, or just all 3 Pidgeottos. Either one would be super hard to deal with off of a stamp, losing all those resources he's been spending this entire game building up. But honestly, he could also just, attack, knock out this Jirachi, and he's still so far ahead that it's going to force Calvin to... it's going to force Callum to take tag team knockouts every turn for the rest of the game, which is basically what he's going to be forced to do here. Looks like Calvin is going aggressive and going into the cross division this turn. I wonder if he's going to target the 2 Jirachis or just all 3 Pidgeottos. I think getting rid of the retreat option on the Jirachi is really strong. So he could even go 1 Jirachi and 2 Pidgeotto. But honestly, it doesn't really matter which decision he goes with. I think any combination of 3 prizes that he takes here is going to be enough to win the game.
I think you are correct. You can see Calvin thinking there, is it worth trying to draw more cards? He's only got like 4 left in deck by the looks of it, so probably not. There's going to be a bunch of damage floating around. 120 going to those 2 Pidgeotto, and then 70 onto the Jirachi in the active, 10 onto the Jirachi that is promoted, and yeah, 3 prizes taken, and this is going to be really, really tough. If Callum is able to somehow come back from this one, I'd be very surprised. I think we're more than likely going to a third game.
Yeah, it would seem likely, but we do know that Callum does have all of the resources he needs in his hand finally. He's been building up this hand for the entire game, so it seems pretty likely that he'll be able to pull off the 5 energy attack for the knockout here onto this Mewtwo. And I don't believe it's going to be possible for Calvin to take 2 prizes on the following turn now he's used his GX attack. So there's technically nothing stopping Callum from just taking the knockout this turn, taking another knockout next turn, and completely stealing this game. But it's going to be so hard, especially when we know next turn almost certainly this Blacephalon's going to be knocked out, so he's going to have to find another one. And chances are he's also probably going to be hit by a reset stamp. So I think if we see a reset stamp from Calvin next turn, that's going to be all it takes to completely lock out this game. But as of right now, I'd say there's maybe still a glimmer of hope in it for Calvin.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think if the hand that he's got there, if he's allowed to keep it, then there's absolutely no reason why he can't successfully pull himself out of this game. There's a welder there for next turn, so he's literally got every single card that he needs to make this game his. It's just a matter of whether he can hold on to those cards. It's a one-card counter from Calvin here. If he can play a reset stamp, then that pretty much locks up the game. But we did mention before, there's not a huge amount of cards left in deck for Calvin, so he might actually find himself in a position where he doesn't have access to reset stamp, which would be horrific, I'd say. It'll be very, very bad. Very, very bad.
It would. I don't remember seeing him play or discard any in this game yet, so theoretically they are still going to be in his deck. I could be wrong. I haven't been carefully watching what all of his acrobikes were discarding, etc. So there could be one in the discard pile or maybe some in the prizes. But I'm pretty sure Calvin is playing 2 copies of Reset Stamp. So if he's not holding it already, I'd like to think he's hopefully got one in his deck. He'll be able to find pretty easily. He does at the very least have the guaranteed knockout on this Blacephalon. It doesn't really matter what attack he declares as long as he just takes out this Blacephalon. It's going to force a pretty large combination of cards to come out from Callum because he's going to need an additional 3 energy than he would usually need, plus another welder. So he definitely wants to take the knockout on this Blacephalon rather than finishing off the last Pidgeotto or something. But yeah, only the real question is, does he find that reset stamp? I didn't see one in his hand, but I didn't get a good look either.
No, he might not have. I think Callum might have also discarded 6 energy there last turn when he didn't need to. But that's okay. He's just guaranteeing it. I'll do 300 to this Pokemon that already has 20 damage on it, but that's fine.
Might as well.
As long as he doesn't miss by 1 energy next turn, then I'm sure he won't care. But yeah, it looks like it's just a Turbo Strike onto a Dedenne, and no stamp means that this is the turn. So he's got 2 Fire Crystals, he's got a Welder, he's got a Blacephalon on the bench, he's got energy in hand. I think he's just looking for 1 energy, which is a bit disappointing.
There's a giant half in play as well.
There is too, so he could just have it. Oh, there's a 3rd Fire Crystal. He's got them all. He's just picking them all up.
Game, right?
That's the game. Unbelievable.
He's got a welder?
Yeah, he picks one off of the Jirachi. There's double attachment. Then he's got even more off of the Flint if he needs them. And there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knockout. And even though... Oh my goodness gracious me. That is unbelievable. Oh, no.
I guess because his deck was so small, he didn't really have any draw options he could go with that wouldn't deck him out, so he really just had to hope to top deck it there.
Yeah.
He had about a 50% chance of top decking as well.
And he just didn't. 50% chance, a flip of a coin, and he missed it. That's unbelievable. Very disappointing for Calvin, but hey, a good win and a good set of games from 2 decks that we'll definitely be seeing again on the channel. MewMew obviously very, very strong, and Blacephalon, now that Malamar's on the way out, could potentially come back. But we'll talk about that later. Thanks, Jordan, for coming along and recording this one.
No problem. Pretty heartbreaking loss to see from Calvin there, but
crushing.
It was a pretty exciting game. He was just 1 stellar wish away.
Unbelievable. And as my screen has turned off, we will say goodbye. Thanks, everyone, for coming along. If you like the content, then do all the things that I used to say that I can't remember. And I'll remember them at some point, and we'll see you next time. Bye.